You know, Michael Myers really didn't need to return. But every time he does, we go and see what he's up to. In the same vein as most other horror franchises, we like seeing our favorite monster return to do what they do best. And yet, whenever Michael comes back, it always feels off. But why is this? I think it comes down to how he acts. Outside of the original, Michael is always treated like a blunt object, which I think is missing something crucial about the first Halloween that none of the sequels ever really recaptured. In the original, he was a smart monster. It really was something I never noticed until I rewatched the original. Unlike later films where he just walks around and kills almost recklessly, the first movie keeps him very restrained. You ever notice all those times when Laurie and her friends are discussing getting together? Well, we're shown, throughout the film that Michael is, in fact, listening, watching Annie and Laurie at different points around the houses. And that's really the big difference. He sits there and plans. For example, when Laurie runs back to escape Michael, she sees the side doors open. Now before the scene, we're shown it to be closed, but the moment we notice that gust of wind causing the curtains to flutter, we know that Michael is in here. It informs us as the audience that Michael has every route already planned out. I think what makes this bit land as well as it does is we've seen how fast he moves prior to his initial attacks, so we already know he can slip in and out of the house whenever he wants. We're even shown earlier with the cemetery and the store that he steals from that he is plotting out how he's going to engage with his victims.
Why do they do it? Goddamn kids.
And all they took was some Halloween mask, a rope, and a couple of knives.
Michael is seen roaming the streets and observing through more of this film than any of the others, which might be boring to some, but realizing that us seeing him all this time he was making sure everything is going his way does land a lot harder. These details like him leaving the glass door slightly open so he can misdirect Bob is one of those more obvious examples. But let's use the build-up to Annie's death as a more detailed example. First, we get a shot of Michael Myers turning his attention to Annie when she drops Laurie off. Then, Michael removes the dog from the equation.
Lester's barking again and getting on my nerves again. Never mind.
We're shown in a faraway shot how much of a distance it is between the washroom and the house. Then we have the catalyst for Michael's go-to for setting up his trap.
Hello? Who's there? Paul, is this one of your cheap tricks? Guess not. No tricks for Annie tonight.
A shot of Lindsey glued to the screen is shown before and after Annie enters the small room. This is enforced by the fact that later on when Annie calls out, she's not heard. Michael has a diversion to grab what he needs from the house. Say, the keys to Annie's car, which we know was meant to be unlocked when Annie gets there. Then when Annie notices the fogged up windshield, that tells us he's dealt with the car earlier. And combined with this phone call scene from earlier, we know what happens next. Having him be this considerate of his surroundings makes us more appreciative of how much of a threat he puts up against the heroes. It's kind of like the Predator missions in the Batman Arkham games. Someone like Jason would be more blunt and hide. Michael would plan out all the traps to knock everyone out in one go. That methodical plotting of his exits and furniture placement to make his kill really makes us more fearful of Michael the more we think about it. And lets us root for Laurie and Loomis when they get the upper hand on him. They just didn't count on that durability thing.
You think I'm lying, Sheriff?
I think you missed him.
That is another thing. There's always that moment in most film scenarios like this that makes the audience wonder, why not hit them again to make sure they stay down? I think the problem with those moments is if the blows are fatal enough for the audience to accept that. If it's not, the viewer sees the survivor as an idiot for not firing another shot or landing another blow the first time they get up. The best good and bad example I have for this is to compare the final chase scene of this movie with that of the final chase scene in the first Friday the 13th.
Look what you did to him!
Pamela gets swiped by a fire poker and hit with the blunt side of it on her back. We know that's not fatal enough, nor is it enough to put her in a reasonable concussion. So when Alice runs away, it makes her out to be incompetent when faced against Mrs. Voorhees. Even with the claim that she's scared or just wanted to get away, she's really stupid for letting it happen 3 more times before landing a killing blow. Michael, on the other hand, is jabbed in the throat by a needle and stabbed in the gut. Those are injuries people shouldn't survive, or at the very least walking around with the same efficiency that Michael does. So when Laurie's not expecting Michael to survive his wounds, it's much more forgivable. Plus, it's 2 attempts that Laurie has to kill Michael, with Loomis shooting him off the balcony in the 3rd go. So do any of the sequels at least have any moments in which they get close to emulating this aspect of Michael? Sadly, no. The closest we get is him taking out the hospital staff in the 2nd film before he stalks Laurie again. But even then, he doesn't use the hospital to his advantage like he did with the street blocks of the first movie. That doesn't mean I hate the sequels, far from it, but the devil is in the details, and it's hard for me not to admit which one worked better. The first one let him be smart.